Hey guys, Omni here. It is finally time to dive into Eric Voss's breakdown for episode 4 of Marvel's What If. You know, this episode was insane. It was extremely tragic, grim, and just a really fun story. I think there's some really great voice work in here. It was really interesting seeing this story just unravel and then actually see the watcher get concerned for a second. Enough to interact with the world, not do anything, not stop anything, but to converse with Strange himself. It was a really interesting moment. There's one scene in particular, if you've seen my reaction, you know which one I'm talking about, that I'm really looking forward to seeing Eric Voss go through scene by scene, and I'm looking forward to checking it out. This is one of their longer ones. This is 26 minutes. I mean, I'm sure some of this is an ad read or two, so we'll just kind of gloss over a little bit of that. As you guys saw, if you did watch my reaction, I visited their merch store and picked up their Watcher What If shirt from their collection. And yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Obviously, I'm not going to wear it again until I wash it. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive into this thing and see what good old Eric over at New Rockstars has to say, what he's found, what he's discovered. And if you're not subscribed to New Rockstars, do it. Anyway, here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Marvel Studios' What If Episode 4. What if Doctor Strange lost his heart instead of his hands? And what if we all lost our minds with this tragic horror of an episode, unafraid to sentence its hero to bleak consequences? My favorite episode of the series yet, and not just because it had like 20 Mephistos in it, if you could even call them that, but because this episode was filled with beautiful imagery and concepts that are fascinating to break down, but you gotta do it frame by frame, and I'm gonna do that and point out all the animation details.
I gotta say, I think this is my favorite so far.
This video is sponsored by Storyblocks. More on them later. We open with the outline of the Watcher, but notice how we see more of his body than usual. In fact, he's made more and more appearances with each new episode of the season, as if getting closer and closer to finally intervening. But by the end of this episode, we do actually see his full flesh before he reverts to his astral silhouette, like a judge who abides by habeas corpus to render a guilty verdict in person before returning to his chambers. He says,
"What if the best of intentions has very strange consequences?"
Yeah, that music was Michael Giacchino's Doctor Strange theme, which comes back throughout this episode.
Where am I? The Ancient One warned us. If we save Christine, we destroy the world.
Benedict Cumberbatch and Rachel McAdams return to voice Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer.
You, stunning.
I'm only going for dessert. You promised me creme brulee.
Yes, in this universe, Strange and Christine are in an active romantic relationship instead of the platonic but still flirty exes they were in the film. She coaches him on his speech.
No, stop. I'm already asleep. Come on, cut the preamble. Let's just get straight to the heart of it.
Choice words for a doctor who spends this episode trying to awaken his dead loved one, the heart that he lost. Now, in the 2016 film, Strange invited Christine to a speaking engagement.
I'm talking tonight at a Neurological Society dinner. Come with me.
Another speaking engagement? So romantic.
You still love coming to those things with me.
But here the event seems like a different one that's a celebration in Strange's honor.
We need to celebrate this.
We are.
You performed a radical hemispherectomy.
It could be another variance, or maybe one of those prior dates when Strange and Christine were still together. Also, we should point out that a hemispherectomy is where half the brain is removed or disconnected from its other half in order to treat seizures and epilepsy, which is quite similar to the way the Ancient One splits the halves of Doctor Strange's identity and mind. Now, the wreck is caused
That sounds
by
so
slightly
scary.
different conditions. Like here, Strange tries to pass a semi-truck and nearly collides head-on with a car, swerves back into his lane, but then gets rear-ended. In the film, he passes a car and collides with it while distracted, but still the wreck itself goes down exactly the same way, frame by frame, even spinning into a pole and then flipping on its front end into a fence before teetering down into the water. Strange cries over Christine while framed in this broken glass of the back windshield.
I love that
this
shot.
Whole series depicts the multiverse as shards of broken glass, and at the end of this episode, after Strange has allowed his universe to melt away, he is trapped inside a condensed prison prism of shards, crying once more alone. So this shot here in the crashed car foreshadows Strange's tragic destiny.
Yep.
Strange ends up in Camartage, but this version of Strange has not had his hands damaged, which in the films was his unhealable wound, with that tremble even persisting all the way through Avengers Endgame. But you'll notice not in the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. Got a theory for that, keep that in mind for later. But still having his hands allows Stephen Strange to surpass the mastery of his film version. And this guy never having a constant reminder of his arrogant mistake to ground him in that guilt. Instead, he feels like the universe stole something from him. Strange discovers
The Eye of Agamotto, cradle of the temporal singularity discovered by Cagliostro, manipulation and alteration of timelines.
yes, the temporal singularity, of course referring to the time stone. The word singularity coming from Wong's recap in Infinity War of the stones being the singularities from the Big Bang. As in the film, Strange uses the time stone to unwind and rewind the bites of an apple, and he is caught in the act by Wong and the Ancient One with Benedict Wong and Tilda Swinton returning.
Tinkering with time can weaken the very fabric of the universe.
We protect reality. We don't threaten it.
But in the film, Mordo joined Wong in admonishing Strange, but Mordo was mysteriously absent from this episode. They didn't even bring in a guest voice actor to try to emulate Chiwetel Ejiofor like they normally do for actors they can't get back in there. Not sure why, but without this scolding conscience,
That's a good point.
It does unleash Strange to go further with his sorcery than he would otherwise. As in the film, the Ancient One dies and Strange bargains with Dormammu and becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, but now he uses the Time Stone to return to the night of Christine's death. Now, compared to the time travel logic of Loki in Endgame, Doctor Strange's Time Stone magic seems limited to within his timeline. Like, he doesn't create branch timelines so much as he relives history within his timeline by reversing time and creating time loops. Definitely seems more limited in scope compared to the more technological quantum approach to time travel used by Kang, the TVA, and the Avengers, who, when they alter time, create branch timelines. This could be why the TVA showed us the Infinity Stones, from their point of view, as powerless outside of their home timelines. But since we stay within Doctor Strange's timeline here, this time stone is infinitely powerful. And Strange creates a new loop point that begins with Christine at the car, similar to how he used a time loop to torture Dormammu, but here Strange creates this Groundhog Day scenario to essentially torture himself, really, which is like...
And me a little bit. I mentioned it in my reaction. Like, I was in a pretty intense car crash that I really had took a while to get over the flashbacks. I wasn't the one driving or anything, but it was like a pretty heavy rolling incident that also involved a hillside. Like, I still remember that night and that incident vividly. I was in the back seat. We were young. None of us had seat belts. It's a miracle any of us were alive. I only came out of it with like a scratch that only needed like one stitch. We rolled 5 or 6 times across this hill. There was gas leaking. We could smell it. We were all, lucky enough, pretty fine. Like, it was like 2 feet away from hitting a pole and the car getting ripped in half. So like, it's just one of those things it just, like, I still remember it. Like, it's happening in the moment. And this guy, like, seeing this on repeat, seeing it one time's fine, but seeing it on repeat, each time he's doing it, each one of these crashes, man, it was like it was hidden deeper and deeper into that, like, past trauma just a little bit. Though I've gotten over it by this point. It used to, anytime I would go around that curve, again, and it was a curve I would go around frequently because it went to my best friend's house, and, you know, for a while after that incident, I would just go around that curve and I would just like my breath would get so short and I'd be so jittery about that curve. And anytime I was driving, man, I took it as slow as you could possibly take it because it was a sharp turn too, man. Anyway, sorry. Just a little story I wanted to add in here for you guys.
Ironic because Dormammu was Benedict Cumberbatch with his voice and performed via mocap. All of this plays out like the heartbreaking
I didn't know
montage
that.
in Groundhog Day when Bill Murray tries over and over to save a dying homeless man. A sequence that always makes me tear up because he calls him Pop and Dad. He goes to the extent of thinking himself as a doctor, demanding to see the guy's chart, the way Doctor Strange arrogantly refuses to let his patient die. There's a moment where Strange seats Christine in the car on one loop, and the Watcher's reflection appears beside him, but notice how Strange blinks, almost seeming to sense him. But no matter what, in this montage, death on wheels always seems to come for Regina George. I actually theorize that each of these fateful deaths could have been sent by Strange's future Strange Supreme form, trying to fix his own mess and force his past self to move on. Because notice the vagrant who randomly shoots in the pizza shop for no reason. That guy's face is only shown from afar and here in shadow, because that could be the face of that Strange Supreme, unrecognizable to.
Well, I mean, hold on. Let's rewind just a second here, because I see something different there. Like if we go back, I mean, obviously the chin shape's different to me. This guy's only got the bottom scruff. Like he doesn't have like the mustache, the goatee, a connecting anything. Like he's just got one of these. They got a different nose, different lips. I don't think that. I don't buy that.
Shadow, because that could be the face of that Strange Supreme, unrecognizable to his past self here. Even when Strange stands her up, she still dies.
I also don't think to fix his own timeline, Strange would go back and be the one pulling the trigger.
In a building fire.
Reports of numerous casualties, including the death of one Dr. Christine Palmer.
Surgeon file photo, ready to go while the building's still blazing. Okay. Actually, that reporter is Christine Everhart, voiced by Leslie Bibb, the recurring MCU WHIH reporter who first appeared in the first Iron Man. The Ancient One appears to him from a blue portal, which compared to the golden sparkle portals normally used by sorcerers, might indicate a higher form of magic, allowing one to traverse timelines or dimensions or realms, like the blue portal Captain Carter and the tentacle monster went through, and the blue color Christine glows when Strange resurrects her at the end of the episode. Now, the Ancient One would still be alive at this point in the timeline, right? Because the night of Christine's death, the Ancient One was still living. But the fact that she uses this blue portal is just interesting to note, because she is someone who has seen every part of her life and every part of her timeline. She seems to have an omniscience to her, and she could be coming to Strange through another realm. And she explains,
Her death is an absolute point in time.
Absolute.
Unchangeable. Unmovable.
Okay, so absolute points, a kind of new rule in the MCU's ever-expanding timeline logic that I'm sure some folks might debate whether or not applies to the live-action MCU titles, but for now, I'm gonna assume it does. Again, in Endgame and Loki, past tragedies could be altered or subverted, but doing so would result in the creation of a branch timeline. Thanos' snap, though, could not be prevented. It could be practically undone by extracting Infinity Stones from the past and using them to snap everyone back in the present, though the world still had to live with the consequences of some people living 5 years more than others, the sudden population change from snaps. That seemed like it could have been an absolute point that they just kind of had to work around. But now we are learning that some events are considered absolute points. They are fixed, load-bearing, watershed moments that cannot be erased. These could be anchor points that were placed in the timeline by whatever version of Kang in order to maintain stability to that universe's sacred timeline. So in this episode, when Strange eventually forces Christine's survival, he violates the natural limits of his time stone.
He's also undoing his own nexus point,
of that timeline,
which pushed him on his journey, which would have stopped him from doing this to begin with, creating a paradoxical loop. So he's undoing his own time stream, not really changing it, because he's also using the time stone to do it, which links him into his own time stream, preventing the branches, if we listen to the Ancient One from Infinity War, or I'm sorry, Endgame. So being unable to create a branch using the Infinity Stone to do the time travel, I mean, he's basically breaking the reality surrounding his own existence. So yeah, that's it.
Beyond the timeline logic that his time stone could have any control over. It's like the darkest timeline that the Ancient One warned Bruce Banner about in Endgame.
In this new branch reality, without our chief weapon against the forces of darkness, our world would be overrun. Millions will suffer.
Which the Ancient One in this episode echoes.
This path only leads to darkness and the end of this reality.
The darkness on that hypothetical branch that she talked about in Endgame could have meant that the branch would eventually self-prune by melting away into this cosmic sludge that we see in this episode. A choice that I really like, because for one, it contrasts the dry, dusting aesthetic of Infinity War, but also evokes the more dark matter that makes up the borders of this reality, and in the medium of comics, in classic animation, the ink that these characters are literally
That's what I thought about, and it looked like ink.
Remember, Christine Palmer's death is only an absolute point in this universe, not the universe of the primary MCU.
Right.
Because she's still alive in the primary MCU, we're all still fine. So this would suggest that different universes are structured with different absolute points, that Kang timeline scribe considered to be unchangeable. So the Ancient One attacks Strange to keep him from going further, and notice how her spell explodes in a white impact blast. I love when the show does this. It's really fun to pause at the right moment. Like, first she does it when she brings the edges of her runic fans together, and then when it hits Strange. It creates this one black line where he was standing, representing how the Ancient One just split his soul in half. So Strange thinks he survived it, going to the distant past to the library of Cagliostro before this library was lost, alongside several other ancient libraries, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. In this case, Cagliostro was an actual real person in history, but in the lore of Marvel Comics, he was an ancient Italian sorcerer, and it was his spells of the Book of Cagliostro, the spellbook in the 2016 film. Strange is greeted by Obeng, voiced by Ike Amati, and he later implies to Strange that he is not himself Cagliostro, but in fact, in the comics, Obeng is the possible real-life name of the actual Cagliostro. And notice how he has one blue eye and one reddish-brown eye. Maybe a clue that Strange is here in a split reality, split between a place where his eyes stay clear blue and another place where his eyes go darker and at times red. The Lost Library of Cagliostro is beautiful inside and out. The facade of it has carvings of winged griffins and then is flanked by larger sphinxes. The Sphinx is a mythological being who posed the riddle which creature has one voice and yet becomes four-footed and then two-footed and then three-footed. The answer being man, who crawls on all fours as a baby, walks on 2 feet as an adult, and uses a walking stick in old age, which you could see reflecting Strange's journey as a man, on a literal sense, taking multi-limbed forms, but also lives throughout centuries, as Obeng ages into an old man who cannot stand on his 2 feet. As he tries to go inside, Strange encounters all these protective runes, much like the ones Wanda and Agatha used against each other in WandaVision. Wizards love runes. And Obeng greets him.
Sorcerer Armani?
No, it's Strange.
Not any stranger than any other name in this world.
Calling back the name wordplay that Caecilius had with him in the 2016 film.
How long have you been at Kamar-Taj, Mr.
Doctor.
Mr. Doctor?
It's Strange.
Maybe.
Inside the
I
library
love
of Cagliostro, Strange finds the book
that
on
scene,
time
and I love
manipulation. This is the same
man.
book of Cagliostro from the Kamar-Taj library that we saw in Doctor Strange. It has the same cover, but this would be hundreds of years earlier before it ended up in Kamar-Taj. The page he actually opens up to are the same pages that Caecilius tore out of the book in the 2016 film, and you can see that same Dark Dimension symbol, the one that Caecilius conjures in the church, and it appeared on his and the Ancient One's foreheads, because the Ancient One would draw power from the Dark Dimension. That's why she was called a hypocrite. Learning that he has to absorb other entities, Strange attempts to absorb the freaking same interdimensional tentacle monster from episode 1 with Captain Carter. Now, I speculated then that this could be one of the Elder Gods, aka the many angled ones like Shuma Gorath, who is speculated to appear in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is a huge deal that it came back, because other than the Watcher himself, this is a first example of continuity on this series. And since the trailer showed that one image of Captain Carter meeting the Strange Supreme, I think we can expect a later episode this season to confirm what exactly this monster is. And keep in mind that we may only be seeing this entity's bottom half. And Shang-Chi promotional footage seems to be showing some massive tentacled entity in that movie's final battle. We'll know
that
after Shang-Chi
looks like a hand.
There could be a connection.
That's a big hand, dude.
Obeng says,
That's a hand. But it could be part of the body. And the tentacles are something else.
Weird thing to say, because Dormammu totally did bargain, at least eventually after being worn down. Unless you consider that the deal Strange made with Dormammu might have not been a deal in Strange's favor, but a curse that Dormammu might have benefited from. Strange starts smaller this time with an evil little gnome, and then an insect whom he sends back, but takes its cloak of levitation, meaning that this might have been some alternate variant in a reality that was a sorcerer. And you'll notice that this cloak has a darker color and golden lining, similar to the flesh of that insect himself. He then absorbs a cosmic six-eyed bird, whom he strips of its feathers, and then a dragon.
Raven.
I guess you could say it looks a bit like
from
the Great
DC. He
Protector of
stole
Shang-Chi.
solar
And the
powers.
dragon turns his skin red and gives him horns, making Strange look a bit like, we have to admit, Mephisto. And because this is followed by a freaking double-headed goat, like the skull we saw in Agatha Harkness's Satanic Dungeon, and then this laughing humanoid being.
Yeah,
with
look at
a
that thing,
skull
dude.
head, a cape, and with antlers, and then a snarling bat demon. Now, this episode never explicitly calls any of these entities Mephisto. Of course it didn't.
Or
But
demons,
this
for
demonic
that matter.
imagery alone dispels that stupid myth that people keep throwing at me that Disney will never put demons in their properties, as if Fantasia and Hocus Pocus never happened, or WandaVision with its witches and Book of the Damned. And by absorbing these things, Strange gains enough power to be able to perceive past reality to the form of the Watcher, which is the kind of reality bending abilities normally reserved for entities like Mephisto.
But the fate of his universe is not worth risking the safety of all others. Besides, I doubt he'd listen.
Hello? Who's there?
So, Mephisto confirmed? Well, no, of course not. Not yet, technically. But this is the kind of supernatural evil within Strange's consciousness that I mentioned in my recent video that makes it at least more likely that Doctor Strange in No Way Home or Multiverse of Madness could be influenced by Mephisto. And since in that No Way Home footage, Strange's hand is not scarred and does not tremble, I am wondering if that could be the Strange from this reality. A theory I go much more into in our episode of Inside Marvel. Now, the next absorbed demons include this evil elk
We'll
that makes
see.
Strange grow antlers, giving him a silhouette of Hela, another dragon who makes Strange's face
Like,
stretch
this
out into a
imagery,
snout,
all of it
a
is,
demon
like,
wolf
gorgeous,
with weirdly a
and-
pierced ear, and then a snake that turns Strange into a snake that
I
still
loved
has his
this
hair.
entire
But then we gotta
sequence-
look at these
se-
flashes
sequence.
of body horror that go by real fast. You gotta go through frame
Yeah.
by frame. First, there's Strange in this
Ugh.
thick boy, red Hellboy style demon form who sprouts a second head. Then Strange made of this yellowy, waxy substance. Then Strange in an insectoid form with antenna and barbed appendages. And then, fascinatingly, Strange with the facial texture in the eyes of Dormammu, including a third eye on his forehead. Could throughout this process, Strange have at some point absorbed Dormammu as well? He transforms into a snarling, fanged Strange with rows of glowing eyes, who then turns back into Strange's semi-normal head, but his skin cracking like a paper lantern burning from the inside. Meanwhile, the time-lapse outside the library shows the lush greenery wilting away from the cliffside as hundreds of years have passed. So then Strange re-summons that tentacle monster from the beginning, this time slicing off its limbs and absorbing them into his flesh, ending with this gross neck snap. Now, it's interesting how the creature's tentacles still have some life in them, even after they were cut off, which could mean that when those severed parts came back through the portal with Captain Carter in episode 1, those pieces could still be dangerous to Peggy and the others of that universe. A bang reveals that Strange Supreme was merely one half of himself in a split
Could
reality,
regenerate
and we jump
into
back
a
to his
whole other
side,
version
who's
of
moved
it.
on from Christine, but Strange sees that this reality is melting into the inky sludge, and the Ancient One arrives to explain what's going on.
Hello, Stephen.
No, whoa, wait a minute. You're
Dead? Yes.
So this must be.
A psychic impression sent through a splinter in reality. Just think of me as an echo.
Now you may ask, why is the Ancient One ghostly now, but in a more living form when she appeared to Strange before? Well, before, the Ancient One would have been alive at that point in Strange's time loop in early 2016. And because she is all-knowing, she just knew the implications of what Strange was trying to do then. But now she would have been dead after Strange had become the Sorcerer Supreme. And by psychic impression and echo, it appears that she has left this sorcery-based carbon copy of her mind, which is now flickering because her magic
Kinda like
is
Jor-El.
fading in this dying universe. And this echo is trying to explain to Strange what she had done.
I drew upon the power of the dark dimension to split the timeline, allowing for 2 of your possible timelines to occur in one universe.
Yes, so as the Ancient One did in the 2016 film, she used magic from the Dark Dimension. That's why she had the symbol on her head. That's why Caecilius would call her a hypocrite. But it's interesting how the Ancient One's words remind us that timelines and universes are not synonymous and interchangeable. They're really different structural categories because branch timelines coexist within one universe. Similar to how in Loki, branch timelines could snake off of the sacred timeline, but that all of those existed within the same universe, and that the more branches from that sacred timeline make that bigger universe less stable. So in the end, when it splintered off into thousands and thousands of different branches, that whole universe was one of infinite more. But I love the audio distortion effect on the Ancient One's words, but notice how the distortion snaps back into clarity right on the one line when she delivers a key message.
If the other Strange succeeds in reversing an absolute point in our universe,
You mean saving Christine?
he cannot save her, Stephen. The The resulting temporal paradox will destroy this universe.
So Wong hooks up Strange with a protection spell.
Guardian Vishanti. Heavy-duty protection spell.
Yes, the Vishanti are actually a trio of godlike entities, Oshtur, Hogoth, and Agamotto, who serve as patrons for the Sorcerer Supreme, those who sit above, and the seal of Vishanti that forms the Sanctum window is referencing these Vishanti. And I like how the runes burn into his face. These are actually the same ones that swarmed the alternate Strange in the Cagliostro Temple, which remember, he could handle one at a time, but the swarm of them collectively was a bit overwhelming for him, which explains why this Strange is able to, for most of the battle, stay evenly matched. As they talk to each other, Strange Supreme rages, and you can see for a moment shadows of the other absorbed entities burst out of him in fire, including a claw and a horned animal skull. And he takes them back to the scene of the crash. For a brief shot, you can see the broken windshield glass refracting the form of Good Strange, showing how he is from a broken reality, and in this case might be a bit less fit for battle. And then they duel! Strange Supreme uses the beastly
This fight
demons
was
inside
awesome.
him. He turns his hand into tentacles to break through Good Strange's shield, and then he deploys sandworms. And then the two cloaks of levitation square off, but then Good Strange's cloak sacrifices himself. Oh, you can even hear a pained little scream when he tears apart. Strange Supreme distracts him with his orb of light and then creeps up behind him to drag him into a shadow realm. Might be using Strange's ability to see the Watcher and to distracting him that might just be the Watcher, but no, it's actually his shadow self. And then he uses the inky dark matter that people are melting into to form the memory of Christine, but Good Strange realizes it's an illusion and Strange Supreme punches him out of it, shattering like a glass pane. You can see those shards falling with them. Another example of how reality, even a small pocket reality like this one, takes the form of a delicate crystal just on the verge of shattering. Shockingly, Strange Supreme defeats him and absorbs his other self, and the eye of Agamotto turns red, along with those runic rings around his wrist, which would normally, of course, glow green, but this is no longer manipulation of time, but manipulation of reality, like the red reality stone, but also like Wanda Maximoff's chaos magic. Red meaning less orderly and more insidious. Strange's final form is a freak. It includes tattered wings, tentacles, horns, hooved feet, and multiple eyes just plopped randomly all over the face. Now again, the name Mephisto never gets spoken this episode, but the demonic nature of Strange's transformation speaks for itself. Like notice when he says her name, his voice is accompanied by separate whispers.
Christine.
And as he leans into Christine, his extra eyes all twitch independently of each other. And as his reality's final pieces crumble apart, these other entities suddenly vacate his body.
This wasn't supposed to happen.
Because you could argue these mystic entities might have come out on top, hijacking this Sorcerer Supreme to destroy his own universe. So when Obang said mystic entities don't bargain, the fact that one of those could have been Dormammu could mean that Dormammu won that battle after all, and that all of these entities, down to that little gnome, might have been victorious here. Strange begs the Watcher for
Maybe.
help.
I read about you, sensed your presence. You're a god. You can undo this.
I'm not a god, and neither are you.
If Strange had read about Uatu the Watcher, that would imply there might have been others in this universe powerful enough to have witnessed or sensed the Watcher's presence in the past. Who else in this MCU could be aware of Watchers? Perhaps Kang or He Who Remains? Maybe the Ancient One? Maybe even Wanda Maximoff, who did suddenly see someone while reading that Darkhold in the WandaVision post-credit scene. But Strange is left tragically alone, clutching Christine as she melts away in his hands, similar to Peter Parker dusting in Tony Stark's hands.
I'm sorry. I am so sorry.
One life, one choice, one moment can destroy the entire universe.
And as the episode goes to credits, we are just left with this feeling like some kind of grim cautionary tale, but for whom exactly? Now, sure, you could see this as a lesson about the dangers of clinging too much to a lost loved one, fixing what cannot be fixed, but the most impactful images of this episode are the tale of a wizard who goes too far. And none of us are sorcerers with the ability to reverse time or rewrite
that you know
reality.
of.
Well, yet. Working on some stuff on the side. I really think this episode just seems like a taste of the horrors to come as characters in the Marvel world face multiversal madness, especially in the live action universe. That's why I think it's definitely worth considering this episode as having actual implications on titles like No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, because it's the first episode this season that did not use a single sound-alike actor, as if this live action cast knows the importance of this story on their characters' journeys. And yes, it reintroduces that multiversal monster that seems like it could tie into Multiverse of Madness or even Shang-Chi. So there was a time when folks were not sure if Marvel's What If was essential watching, but now I think it is clear this is essential rewatching. You can support New Rockstars by checking out all of our merch options like this.
I know I had a couple people ask where I got that shirt. Well, here it is. go over there and go grab you one if you want. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting read, man. Definitely the absolute point thing like took me a minute to kind of wrap my head around, but I think I've got that down. Just an ever growing complexity added to the timelines and the structure of the timeline, structure of the multiverse and the MCU, and how those things all play a part. I was a little disappointed, and maybe it's just because none of these things paralleled with anything, but from the read I got in the comments is that some of the creatures we saw through those sequences were, in fact, entities from the comics. So that's why I was like, we didn't get anything in this video, honestly, about it. So that's where I'm kind of conflicted. I mean, I don't know. Like I've said, a majority of my Marvel knowledge comes from the MCU or the earlier 90s animated series that they've had. I've never been too deep into the comics myself, except for any of the time that I've done my own research that has come from the curiosity from watching the films as they come out over the years, whether it be the X-Men, Blade, Spider-Man, or until we finally get into the MCU and its birth. That's really what's gotten me invested in the greater universe of things. And I still don't know a lot of this stuff, and I'm learning it as we go along. DC's more my speed, and it always has been. Like, that's what I kind of grew up with, and that's where most of my knowledge is. And that's one of the things I've liked about, I think I'm able to gravitate and latch onto the MCU pretty easily, is just because it's all new to me. I'm all experiencing it as it's coming along, and I'm just taking the information as it's given to me. And it's just fun when I learn about how things tie into the comics, how they're adapting things and stuff like that. And I like the way they're playing around with everything. I do think that this episode is playing with some themes that I think that are going to carry on into the upcoming projects. I wholeheartedly think that the things that we're seeing in this show are definitely going to come back around, either in No Way Home or in Multiverse of Madness. And not talking just rumors or anything like that. I just feel like it's going to be connected. Even in this episode, it made sure to use the same imagery and style as the Multiverse of Madness logo. Like that inky encroachment on reality that we see in this is what is happening to the Multiverse of Madness logo. You can see it, that ethereal energy around the logo itself. Like it's definitely going to come into play. I have to imagine it's going to. And I do like the theory that there might be a different Doctor Strange in the Spider-Man movie. I do also think that we saw more than one Strange in that, though I do think it's the OG one that cast the spell. But we'll see. It's just fun speculation all around, and I don't want anybody to get too heated or on the defense if they feel the need about my thoughts, theories, or opinions, because we're just having fun. We're just talking shit. We're just having a blast thinking about how these things are all going to tie together. And this was just a visually stunning episode. From the art, I like that Eric at least takes the time to kind of appreciate the aesthetic and the artistic choices that go into this, like even going down to how they create these splashes of imagery that are really gorgeous. The coloration, I'm really digging it. Yeah, I loved it. It was dark, it was bleak, it was like you said, more of a cautionary tale, but not, like you said, not for us, but I think for what the MCU has to come is what I think it is for. It's basically like, this is a little bit of a taste, a warning of what can come out of the dangers of this multiverse existing. But had a blast with it, man. Anyway, guys, I don't know what else to talk about. I think I might be rambling at this point. This video is already going on long enough. So let's go ahead and call it a quits. I want to know your thoughts on this episode, your thoughts on this breakdown. Share your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video, or you can come join me in our Discord and we could talk about it there, or follow me on all of my socials. Links to all that is in the description of this video. Before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends. Mandy Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, and Yuri Kurskov. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'll see you guys next week with the next episode and the next breakdown for Marvel's What If. Take care, everybody.